Hi, my name is Tracy Cook, and this series gives a voice to those that have overcome obstacles in all forms that now dare greatly to be the visionaries of tomorrow, inspiring people through their story to create a world of love, hope, and empathy. Because we all know that change starts with our story. So please subscribe and check out the show notes for how to connect with our special featured guest today and the free resources available to you from our Brand Your Story Academy. All the details are in our show notes. Our upcoming guest, our beautiful guest today, is telling her story for the first time. This is a big deal. Now, our guest, I'll introduce her in just a moment. She ticks all of the boxes not to be a success, living through fear of loneliness in the world, divorced at 20, with a 12-month-old son, 3 marriages. Her father was a survivor of the Holocaust, losing her mother and her brother, who is her best friend, and also lots of other lived experiences that we may delve deep into today. Losing her grandbaby at 6 months of old age to brain cancer. Now, our upcoming guest, Agi Mooy, welcome to Victim to Victory.
Oh, hello, Tracy. Thank you so much, for allowing me to share my voice on Victim to Victory. It's an absolute honor and privilege.
Thank
I
you.
I'm very excited to be here. I do have a story, and I hope, in some way it can resonate with people. So, my story, gosh, my story really, I was looking at what you were saying, and I was putting it into a timeline, so to speak. But really, I think everything that has occurred in my life and everything that I have achieved in my life, I think goes back to my father, in all honesty. And he was, as you said, a survivor of the Holocaust. And, I personally cannot even imagine the trauma, the fear, the anger, the anguish. When you actually survive a train trip to Poland with no food and no water, and when you get out of that train and you are one of the survivors amongst people who haven't survived, and then you are asked to go one direction and you see your entire family go in another direction, to actually know that they're not going to come back, because they've been condemned to death for no other reason that some person's preconceived idea of what should happen at that time. uh, my mum, who at the time was back in Hungary, with a little boy, my brother, and having to literally hide him in an attic. Again, trauma. Neither parent knowing what's happening or what's going on. And a very unexpected, after the Russian occupation, a very unexpected meet in Vienna. And then with that, with that unexpected meet, they've put their visas in for a few different countries. Australia comes through first, and I guess here we are. And then a little girl is born. So there is 20 years difference between my brother and myself. And for me, so much loss has occurred in my timeline. So, and fear. So at the age of 20, or at the age of 19, I was married and, with a little boy. At the age of 20, divorced. And, but I'll go back prior to that. I actually, before the marriage and before, meeting my husband, I had made a decision that I wanted to be like my dad, even early as that. I wanted to not be the norm. And not just go to school. I decided that I wanted to, get out into the workforce, and I wanted to do things and experience things. Can you imagine at the age of 17 walking around the streets of Sydney and walking into every shop and asking if there was availability of employment? Back then you didn't need a resume. You just had to present yourself, walk into the stores, and I desperately wanted to work in a store. And lo and behold, one store actually said, come back after lunch and the manager will interview you. And I'll never forget, it was a beautiful store. It was called Mr. Christian, and they sold handmade shoes and bags. And then I had to go home and tell my parents that I had got that job. And I knew that they weren't going to be too happy with that, because it actually meant cutting out of school 6 months early in my higher school certificate. I guess where it came, my father heard, went out and did this on her own. And then he also heard, shoes and bags, because when he came to this country, and one of the reasons he did survive the Holocaust was he was a shoemaker.
Wow.
And yeah, so when he heard all this, he's like, my little girl, okay, okay. So let's move forward. And I met my husband, and to be honest with you, there wasn't anything really wrong with the marriage. It was more that I felt I couldn't give my husband the things that he needed. I felt insecure. I'd already felt fear coming into the relationship, and we parted because of me. And there I was with a young baby. And back in those days, and we're talking, 1978, and back in those days, you didn't get assistance or government assistance. So when you made a decision like that, it was a decision where you had to stand up on your own 2 feet. You really did. And it was scary. And I knew that my mum and dad, they would support me, but me, the way that I was programmed or built, I wanted to stand up on my own. Anyway, there was a lot of fear attached at that time. And then again, my dad organized for me to get a placement and work at a bank. And that was joyous, because I've come to learn that I've always been in industries of service, and like working in a shop, helping people look gorgeous in their shoes and trying the right bags on. It's still making people happy. And even with the bank, I worked there for 10 years, and it was still making people happy. I would help people with their insurance, with their term deposits. It was still in the service industry. And so that was really cool. And I had met, a wonderful man during that period. And we really did have a great time together. And we got married. And I had another little boy. And then it's almost as if like happiness, and then you get slammed.
Hmm.
So we moved to the country. So this was all occurring in Sydney, and I'm from Sydney. And we moved to the country because there was a friend of his, and he had bought a hotel. And he said that it would be great country lifestyle if we moved to the country and we could manage that hotel for him. Well, little did I know, and I'm sure little did my husband know, that that hotel was set up to fail. It was set up as somewhere to put money that then would go downhill. And it really turned, quite ugly, and it couldn't be saved. And I went back home to my mum and dad, and or actually just my dad at that stage. I'd already lost my mum, I'd lost my brother, And I get a phone call or a knock on the door, and it was to say that my husband had committed suicide. And honestly, there was zero sign of any of that was going to happen, because he was 100% certain that everything was going to be okay. And, he was going to find another little business in the country. But as I look back on it, I guess the scaredness of that's why he sent me back home, because perhaps he had already known. And my life just absolutely crumbled at that stage. I couldn't think. I was paralyzed. I couldn't. It was hard. It was really, really hard. And as I said previously, losing my brother, he really was my best friend, because there was 20 years between us, and everything that we did together, he treated me like his little girl. I'll move forward. There's more. um,
Now,
so
Aggie, I mean, just up until this point, you've shown so much bravery and picking yourself up, and you've lost your mother, you've lost your brother, you've lost your second husband, you've had two marriages, you've still got two children you're looking after.
mhm.
This is just such a weight, and totally understandable that you're feeling kind of a bit lost and a bit fearful about your future. This is just such an amazing journey, and more than most people could bear. What happened next after that?
There was anger inside of that as well. It was like, why me? Why always me? So what happened after that was I went to visit my dad back in Sydney, and because I had come back to the country for clearly the funeral and a few things to get sorted. And I went to visit my dad back in Sydney, and I walked in. I can't explain why, but I walked into a TAFE, as we used to call it back then, a technical college, and there was this incredible artwork all over the walls. And then there was a little sign, and the little sign said, "Learn to paint." And I thought, wouldn't that be amazing? Well, let me fast forward. It was amazing. I was so excited. I went back to dad and I said, how can I make this work? How can I come back to Sydney each week, for a few days? How could I take on a TAFE course? And he was going to help me out with the boys. And I did the TAFE course, and I actually became an art teacher. And I know, so diverse from what I was doing, from a licensee of a hotel to an art teacher. And I developed this beautiful clientele up here in the country. And before long, everybody was talking about it. And I was running classes. And, you know, what became very obvious was a lack of supply of paint, of brushes, and of tools. And my then partner, my new partner, another new partner, said to me, why don't you open a shop? And I did. That's exactly what I did do. And I had the most amazing experiences with the most amazing women. I used to stay back with them at night time. I used to pour my soul into them. We used to paint together. We are still to this day really, really good friends with a few of the core girls. And everything was running along pretty cool. And that was up to the year 2000. And I remember that because that was the year they brought in GST. And I thought to myself, do I really want to continue down this path? And then I thought, well, I'll continue for a little while. And then the news that I was sick. So I had a lump on my back that I had checked out, and it turned out to be down, to the third dermal of my skin. It was melanoma. I needed surgery. I needed radiation. And that really did, put a stop to that teaching, the art teaching. I needed to have a break. I needed to look after myself. And interestingly enough, through wanting to get clean product and not put toxins in the house and have toxic cleaning and cleaner products inside my body, I ran into some pretty incredible product that I thought, and I started, cleaning the house with these products and using these products. And I started to feel a little bit better in myself as well. And then, of course, that led to wanting to share those products with everybody. And then, of course, that led to my network marketing business, which was a very, very, very successful business for 20 years. Not to put any slight on what I went through with melanoma, because I was actually told that I needed to tell my boys because the chances of survival past 4 months was slim. And I somehow I got the strength to keep telling myself every single day um, that I was going to see my boys and see them get married and see their babies. So,
I mean, they're
um,
words that no mother wants to hear, and it's we should never outlive our children should never outlive us, and that is just such a position that every mother um, thinks that that is when we get that diagnosis or when we get that prognosis and we hear those words. I think the first place we go to as a protective mother bear is, no, I'm going to fight this. That's not an option. And then the realization of those words sink in after that, don't they? And
they
then it's
sure
like, okay, so what do I do? Do I make plans? Do I still keep fighting? And we do everything fathomably possible to not have that outcome. And just the bravery around that is to be commended as well, Agi.
so yeah, fighting for life. That's interesting. And again, I keep thinking about my dad. He survived for a reason, and I'm making sure that there's validation to that. Absolutely.
Definitely. And your boys are how old at this stage, Aggie?
Oh my goodness, they're 45 and they're 35,
Mm-hmm.
and they've got beautiful families themselves. I adore them. They are my every breath. They are my every living moment. Uh, so, um,
And they know the family story of your or their grandfather being a Holocaust survivor. And they know your story of trauma and travels as well. And how has that changed or impacted the way they live their lives with their families?
that's a great question. They are the absolute parents that I wish I could have been every single day. They are amazing with their children. It is incredible to watch. They come home from work, and, because the 35-year-old has a young family. So from the minute he comes home from work, and he also has his own business, so entrepreneurial, uh, he plays with those kids until it's shower time, and he's the one that showers them. With the other family, again, it's beautiful family. My 45-year-old, he's actually a school teacher, and they had some tragedy as well. So their second born, Luke, was diagnosed with a tumor at the age of 10 weeks when he couldn't move his legs. And unfortunately, my little Lukey never came out of, oh, here we go, out of hospital from 10 weeks to the age 6 months. So, Tracy, I just need to say it's watching your own child watch their child die. That probably has been my biggest sadness. And it's taken 2016 to 2020, 4 years, and I probably should have opened up. That's the one thing I really want to say. Whatever people are going through, there's really good people around you, and you need to ask for help.
Mm.
And so I did. I shut myself away a little bit, and probably not the thing to do. And and then I came across some wonderful people in 2020 who inspired me to no end. And little by little, I started to put the pieces back together again, to the point where uh, we are here now. And I'm in an industry where I get to help people. I get to listen to people. I get to listen to their hurt, their pain, their sorrow, their fear, their emotions. And I get to play quite a big part in helping them, you know, work through those things. So, yeah.
You're a true visionary of tomorrow, Agi, and your lived experience and the exciting times and the traumas that you've been through to still rise up and have that passion, not only as a sought after hypnotherapist, but also you're helping women over 40 to go beyond their self-limiting beliefs, just like you did with your own story, and remove those blocks, those success blockers, and assist them in moving forward in their businesses and their life and becoming the women that God intended. So through your lived experiences and you breaking through, and we always continue to break through limiting beliefs, and also working with and talking to the unconscious mind like you do with your hypnotherapy, and bringing those moments and your own personal journey and that love and that hope and that empathy that you have inside of you to be able to go on to break those generational traumas and to bring vision like you have with your two boys and their families and your grandchildren, to leave that legacy of love, hope, and empathy, because you've been so brave and had that vision to go on and help others. And you're so passionate. Your story today will help change and save so many lives. You've told it for the first time, and I can hear the tears in your voice, and I can feel the energy just coming through our virtual podcast. And I can feel how much impact this is going to have with our audience. And I loved your message of ask for help. So if you're listening today, please take on Agi's words. It's okay to sit in that space and to have a moment to take stock, but you really need to raise your hand, reach out to the resources. If you're in Australia, reach out to counsellors beyond blue and really take stock of where you're heading. Because as Agi's story goes, we have these moments and these happy moments, and then in her own words, and then something will happen. These are all lessons to wear our story like a superhero cape and not an anchor. And they will lead us to something else, just like with Agi's lent her to painting, and to be able to use it almost as a form of therapy and connection. And we always find our purpose when we're not looking for it, just like Agi did. And through Agi's story, I really hope you find inspiration and motivation, because change does start with your story. And Agi, what kind of message would you like to leave our audience on today?
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you, Tracy. So, don't become a victim of yourself. Definitely reach out, ask for help. and turn that fear into courage.
Turn that fear into courage. I love that message. Thank you so much for being a visionary of tomorrow here inside the Victim to Victory podcast. And we honor you for telling your story, your personal story, as hard as this is, for the first time. So everyone listening today, please go check out Agi on the links that we'll provide here in the show notes. You can subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. So leave a comment and you will also go into the draw to win an Amazon gift card. Remember, change starts with your story. Thank you very much, Agi.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
See you in the pod.